Okay, we're going to get going. If you're a student out in the hall, we're going to start up. We're good? Okay. The Swig program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice of the University of San Francisco acknowledges our presence on the unceded land of the indigenous Ohlone communities and pays our respects to these traditional caretakers and elders, past, present, and emerging. It is our intention that this acknowledgement plays a role, however infinitesimal, in a much larger process of confronting the past in order to create a not yet realized future rooted in justice. Welcome everyone to an event of the USF Swig program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice, where tonight we will learn with Michael Twitty for our 10th annual Swig JSSJ Social Justice Lecture titled Imposter Syndrome, Intersectionality and Authenticity as a Lived Experience. My name is Aaron Hahn Tapper, and it's my honor and privilege to direct this cutting-edge program. Let me begin by thanking a number of people for their support for making this event happen. Thank you to all Swig JSSJ faculty and staff, especially our Assistant Director, Oren Kroll-Zeldin, and our new Rabbi in Residence, the first in our school's 165-year-old history, Camille Shira Angel. Yeah! Thank you to our amazing program assistant, Victoria Farlow, and our student research assistant, Zoe Bishop. And thank you to the Department of Theology and Religious Studies for co-sponsoring this event. I'd like to take a brief moment to tell you about our Swig program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice. Founded in 1977, our program is the first Jewish Studies chair or program at a Catholic university anywhere in the world. In 2008, we were reestablished as the Swig program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice, the first academic program worldwide to formally link Jewish Studies with social justice. Including a minor in this field in the classroom, the program offers a wide range of significant Jewish Studies courses not found in other educational settings. Beyond the classroom, we offer extraordinary events that are free and open to the public, such as tonight's event. Let me tell you about our remaining events this semester. On Thursday, March 19th, 6:30, in McLaren, we will learn with Simone Zimmerman, the director of B'Tselem USA, a leading human rights organization working in Israel and Palestine, in an event titled Anti-Occupation Activism, Trumpism, and White Nationalism in America. On Wednesday, April 1st, 6:30 p.m., moderated by USF Middle Eastern Studies Program Director Lindsay Gifford, we will have a panel discussion with 3 essayists and one of the co-editors of the recently published book, Social Justice in Israel and Palestine, Foundational and Contemporary Debates, including Dr. Samia Shoman, Dr. George Bisharat, Oren Kroll-Zeldin, and myself. And on Monday, April 13th, 6:30, also here, we will have our 11th annual Social Justice Passover Seder, this year titled Immigrants, Refugees, and Borders, led by Rabbi in Residence Camille Shira Angel, along with a group of student volunteers and activists. This year's Seder will lift up stories and voices of those who have stood in the shoes of immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers in search of safety and liberty. Join us as we richly explore themes of borders, transgressive acts, and liberation. If you'd like to learn more about these events or our work in general, there are green booklets found just outside the entrance to this room, which you're free to take on your way out. You can also sign up to be on our listserv. We only send out 1 email a month. A sheet can be found next to the green booklet. Through the Swig JSSJ program, we believe that education is the best long-term way to create systemic change. Whether one has the time to take a semester-long course or a mere few hours to hear from a single speaker, education is fundamental to making our world better, paramount in shining the spotlight on the margins, on oppressed communities who are mistreated merely because of their race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or another social identity altogether. Now let me introduce tonight's event formally. That was not a formal one. As you know, tonight's speaker, Michael Twitty, will deliver our 10th annual Social Justice Lecture. Our previous social justice lectures have been delivered by the likes of Peter Geffen, Ronit Avni, Rabbi Amy Eilberg, Rabbi Anat Hoffman, Rabbi Andrew Sachs, Dr. Chen Alone, Stosh Kotler, Rabbi Jill Jacobs in conversation with Rabbi Michael Lezak and activist Dolores Canales, and last year's speaker, Yavila McCoy. Immediately following Mr. Twitty's remarks, he will be in conversation with social justice leader and campus powerhouse, Dr. Mary Wardell Girarduzzi, after which time we will have a brief moment for questions and answers session with all of you. Is that good for me? Yeah. Before I introduce Mr. Twitty, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Wardell Girarduzzi. Mary brings passion for creating more equitable, inclusive, and caring campus climate and culture for all. An executive leader skilled at building organizational capacity through strategic initiatives with over 20 years experience in California higher education, in academic affairs, student life, community engagement, and diversity and inclusion. She is the USF Vice Provost for Diversity Engagement and Community Outreach, as well as an Associate Professor of Organizations, Communication, and Leadership. The recipient of multiple awards at USF, as well as multiple other educational institutions. For me personally, Mary has been and continues to be an ally. She has helped support me and the JSSJ program countless times. She is a constant colleague and supporter, for which I am grateful. We look forward to hearing Mary in conversation with Mr. Twitty following his remarks. As for our keynote speaker, Michael Twitty, he is one of the most important voices in the Jewish American community today. An award-winning author, chef, and scholar, a black, gay, Jewish man of size of Southern heritage. He has titled tonight's topic, Imposter Syndrome, Intersectionality and Authenticity as a Lived Experience. Like many here tonight, I entered tonight's conversation around intersectionality and authenticity from a different place in terms of positionality and identity than our renowned speaker. I'm a white, Jewish, heterosexual, cisgender male who is not an award-winning chef. In 21st century America, it is important for me to acknowledge my multiple privileges. I was born on third base, but did not hit a triple. But what is most remarkable about Mr. Twitty, at least for me, is not simply his important social identities. It's his genius. Michael is one of those unique beings who's able to look at everything around him and make sense of it in a novel way. His brilliance is not only found in his scholarship and his expertise in food, it is also present in his ability to construct new ways of thinking about things. Born in Washington, D.C., Michael is a food writer, independent scholar, culinary historian, and historical interpreter, personally charged with preparing, preserving, and promoting African-American foodways and its parent traditions in Africa, the African diaspora, and its legacy in the food culture of the American South. In 2010, he established Afro-Culinaria, a website and blog aimed at highlighting and addressing food's critical role in the development and definition of African-American civilization and the politics of consumption and cultural ownership that surround it. Michael's work weaves together two distinct brands, the Antebellum Chef and Kosher Soul. Antebellum Chef represents the vast number of unknown black cooks across the Americas that were essential in the creation of the Creole cuisines of the Atlantic world, with the goal to honor the food past and provide for the food future, what he calls culinary justice. Michael contends that a responsible exploration of the heritage of Southern food demands an explicit inclusion of those who were enslaved peoples. The second strand, Kosher Soul, is a brand that deals with what Michael has termed identity cooking, which isn't about fusion, but rather how we construct complex identities and then express them through how and what we eat. Being Kosher Soul is about melding the histories, tastes, flavors, and diasporic wisdom of being black and being Jewish, cultures that express a multiplicity of values. The Cooking Gene, a project Michael began in 2011, culminating in his writing and publishing a book with the same name in 2017, is his personal mission to document the connection between food history and family history from Africa to America, from slavery to freedom. Before passing the microphone to our illustrious guest speaker, I'll end in quoting political consultant Angela Peoples. Following the widespread thanks voiced toward Black women after their unsurpassed involvement during the 2017 special election for a senator of Alabama, Peoples wrote in the New York Times that such praise for Black women was, quote, a small step in the right direction, but we, she said, don't need thanks. We need you to get out of the way and follow our lead. On that note, as I literally get out of the way, please join me in welcoming Michael Twitty to the campus of the University of San Francisco.
You know, the cooking gene, this is not a pattern, a self-pattern that I can do this, so I'm short, you're tall. First of all, I want to thank in absentia, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw for the term intersectionality. I think it's I think for some people it's a battle cry word. And for some of us, it's a way of expressing something we didn't have a word for before. That really helps. It really helps. It helps us understand how to communicate knowledge about who we are. It breaks the bubbles. And even more so, in my own lingo, I say it breaks the curse. One of the big intersectional moments of my career was actually, timer, because I talk too much. Because, you know, I get the Black Jewish ringing mouth thing. And whenever you'll be skeletons, they'll be like, what happened? And they'll blame us for that too. I can see Ben Shapiro now. Work. Anyways, when the cooking gene was being marketed to publishers, you would think that a book that talks about genealogy and genetics, you see an Ancestry commercial on every 5 seconds, right? And we're also supposed to be wearing lederhosen or some nonsense. No, it's Black folks, thank you very much. And then food, everybody eats, but we'll never stop talking about food. Food may take a dip. I predict food's gonna take a dip in our national interests sometime soon. Hopefully not too soon, so I can get paid. But eventually. But we have to eat for sustenance. We have to eat for identity as well. So when I'm marketing this book, one particular publisher, which I remain nameless because I do believe in the rules of Lashon Hara, which means you shouldn't have an evil tongue. You shouldn't spread negative speech. Although I could throw some shade, you know. All those beautiful languages. They were like, so tell us about this Jewish part. This book is supposed to talk about your family coming from the South and their roots in slavery and the food and better eating practices and food justice and culinary justice. So I go on this 20-minute rant on the phone in this conversation over speakerphone from New York to North Carolina where I was doing some work. And my mom had just passed away, so that was in there too. There was all kind of energy. And I was so proud to tell them all about how I'd been a Hebrew school teacher and how I had worked with Rabbi David Schneer and had worked in the Tzedakah garden. And it was this rich life that I had had that totally broke the bubble, and I was in my own unique category. And it also, you know, how my work started in teaching Hebrew school. By the way, if anyone's in the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, you need to nominate me for not killing people's children. So I taught 7th grade Hebrew school for 15 years. See these break? Mm-hmm. That's where they came from. I got a story for you too. Anyways, I learned more about myself and had the courage to go deeper into the other parts of my identity. Because I was a teacher to middle school age kids and beyond. And we, 7th grade, you learn about the Shoah, the Holocaust. And I didn't like the curriculum. I didn't like the fact that our kids didn't know where they came from. I mean, it was all this, a little bit of Bible, a little bit of Israel, and then all of a sudden, they throw in your lap this massive catastrophe. with no context. So being from DC and going to the museum and every other synagogue in the area on the same day, our kids were running around. I said, we gotta stop this. And so when my kids would walk into the museum, I say, we're gonna stop and look at the map real quick. And you're gonna be able to tell me when we go to the museum what parts of that map where your family came from. And then we're gonna look at the part of the panel that talks about the connection between Jim Crow and the Nuremberg laws, and Namibia and what happened there with the Germans. And then we're gonna go see the film on anti-Semitism so that you have historical, cultural context. You're not gonna treat this museum as a horror show, a thrill show. You're going to respect every single life that this museum honors, but you're also going to spend time at the part of the museum where we talk about ending genocide in our own time, because I want you to understand this is still going on. So having that position of being a black man, and I want to repeat that, a black male in those spaces, I didn't think of it as anything until much later, when I realized, I would ask my kids, so, and I taught at five synagogues. Modern Orthodox, Reconstructionist, Reform, Conservative, Jewish Renewal. So I have the entire spectrum of the DC area and its communities. They're not living in the same spaces, they don't have the same jobs, they don't come from the same economic background. And I realized something. I said to them, well, how many teachers of color do you have? And they would go, oh, one. How many of them look like me? We don't have any black male teachers in our school. Or there would be one guy, he was from Ghana, and I said, okay, that's great. He's my cousin, but not African American, right here, right? What about Latinx? What about this? What about that? My kids were living in Potomac in Bethesda. You know, DC area, you know, that's not where, you know, we live. Some of them went to private school. And so I realized that I was, for a lot of the students that I taught over 15 years across all those synagogues and youth group, I was the only figure of authority of color, a man that they ever knew. It was the only black man they ever had to say yes, sir, to. Because I'm Southern, we don't play that. No, I'm not Michael. You're younger than me. I'm Mr. Twitty. Thank you very much. Just like your mother, mom, and dad is yes, sir, no, ma'am. So my kids grew up very, very different. You know, all of my students learned by the time they got in Hebrew school what the phrase, you better go cut a switch means. One of my girls went home to her mom, who's a top DC lawyer, and her mom wasn't paying attention to her at the table. She got a call from a client. And as soon as the mother was done with the phone call, this little girl embarrassed the hell out of me. So she looked at her mother and said, as her brother was trying to say. So apparently I influenced my students in a lot of different ways. Don't ever forget who I am. Okay, great. Okay, great. All frog voice. Yeah. Great. I hate microphones. There we go. So there was a deep and sometimes problematic relationship between me and my students. My students assumed all black people in the DC area lived in the hood. Or that Prince George's County, which is one of the largest concentrations of black wealth in the country, was just a giant ghetto. I'm like, you realize these folks in PG County live in 3 times the amount of gates you live behind, right? I mean, we had to educate them on those levels. I remember Trayvon Martin. I remember what happened when we were talking about it in class. And one of my dear, sweet boys said, but you don't understand, but he was a druggie. I stopped him dead in his tracks. I said, you know what, son? I said, in this synagogue, if somebody was to give up the death penalty for marijuana, everybody in the clergy would be dead. So please don't tell me that's, I had to break it down to them. What if it was you? It could be you. How would you feel? And in 7th grade, I said, we've learned about stop and frisk, right? Nuremberg laws. We've learned about stop and frisk. You know what it's like for somebody to be pulled aside and have their beard cut and touched and have their things broken and stolen and to be marked and profiled. So why would you do that to anybody else? It meant collisions with parents. I had a helicopter parent who said to me who said about me, helicopter parents never talk to you. The helicopter around you. And she said, how dare he? First of all, how dare I what, girl? Come on. How dare I look this good? It's fresh. Doesn't crack what? And she said, how dare he teach my children the word Schwarzer? First of all, sweetie, I didn't teach them the word Schwarzer. Your society did. Second of all, there was an article that I raised the issue about a rabbi who said something really unfortunate. This is my last year teaching in one particular school. Like, I'm going out the door, y'all still on me, right? And I told him, I said, this particular rabbi was being very unethical. And he said to his students, don't commit a crime because if you commit a crime, they'll send you to a jail and you have to be in there with the Schwarzes. And I said to them, you know what, guys? If you hear this word, it's not a nice word. It's a very mean word. Some people will try to convince you that it's just, it's not a nice word to say. And this is why. And some of them said, yeah, I've heard that word before. And I didn't know what it meant. And I said, I broke it down to them. And my kids, my sixth graders were beautiful. They were like, what you want perfect little ethical sixth graders to do. They were like, that's mean, that's not nice, that's not Jewish. If we don't like being called names and being treated so we should do it to other people. Fantastic, A+, you're going to heaven. Or something like it. Phone call comes in. I told the principal, I said, you realize how silly you look right now? I said, you're telling me that the one person who is tailor-made, textured to have this conversation with these students can't have this conversation. You're taking, if you're, she had two kids, a boy and a little girl. I said, if your son used misogynistic, demeaning language, which he will learn in the playground, comes home and uses that word, he uses that word at school, do you want that female teacher he respects and loves to school him in a gentle way? Or do you want him to keep saying the word until he gets smacked? Because somebody will smack him. So what do you want me to do? I said, here you are, you have an African-American teacher, a Jewish teacher, and you don't want me to do my job to inoculate these kids against the very systemic racism that surrounds them from birth to death just like it does me. I said, how silly do you look? I said, I have to apologize about nothing. I'm walking out the door. I'm out. I'm good. But what's not good is when we don't have diverse bodies in our synagogues and our institutions. You know, and I found out much later that they switched to a non-public form of advertising, which means they only wanted wealthy, white, northeastern kids from the camps, from reform camp, from conservative camp to be the teachers. Well, that means that your growing body of biracial and adopted and non-white Jewish students don't see people like me, who can also help them find the resources that they need to be firm in their identity. Stop complaining about how we don't have enough Jews. When you apparently don't care about the ones that don't look like an off-the-shelf type. Stop complaining about how we're dwindling as a people if you're not ready to have a phenotype that doesn't look like some stereotype from 100 years ago. And by the way, we're not the only diverse Jews out there. How many Irish mamas and grandmas we got in the synagogues now? And those kids don't have to be Jewish. They can pass for anything else. They can pass for average, normal, don't talk to me whiteness. And you worried about me? Okay. All right. But I use that teaching experience to go deeper into my own identity. So let's go back to the book. Here I am being told by these folks in New York that my identity is too complicated, that I'm muddying the waters, that my book will be unsellable and it will just be a disaster because they can't possibly find a way to market it. And they said, well, if you just cut out the Jewish part, just be our black author. Oh, wait, bless their heart. Don't wear a kippah in public. I'm like, oh my God, really? Y'all understand that when I was teaching my students about the Shoah, I made them learn about food, right? Because I was so tired of learning about this only as a death event, and not the fact that there were communities that lived in Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe for thousands of years, and then were obliterated. And food helped me connect them to the histories, the traditions. We did the Silk Road and the Gold Roads in 6th grade. I taught my students about all these different Jewish communities of different backgrounds. I'll never forget Katie, Katie Malkin. Katie Malkin's father was the son of Holocaust survivors. And her mother was the daughter of two folks who survived Manzanar. Japanese American and Jewish. And she always felt out of place. She never felt the synagogue was her home. She was happy to have me as a teacher, but she didn't really get, she was like, I can't. She would say to me, I don't know why I'm here. Well, you have all these friends. It's like, yeah, but I have those same friends in school. I don't know why I'm here. So we did our Silk Road program. I said, well, why don't you do Jews in Japan? And I said, go ahead, try it. She comes in the day of the, little, in the synagogue community area museum, dressed in her best traditional clothing, with her kosher sushi in tow. And after that event, I got the rare hug from the angry middle school Jewish kid. She said to me, thank you, Mr. Twitty, because I finally feel whole. I feel like somebody saw me. I can talk about every part of me without feeling like I'm alien, like I'm different, that I should be ashamed of something. And I told her, I said, girl, you come from some of the strongest people on earth. Your grandparents survived things that nobody should have to survive. I said, if you remember that's the courage running through your veins, can nobody tell you who you are? You know? And these same publishers, hey, you can't, da 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 da. You can't talk about being Jewish, you can't wear a kippah. It was my Sandy Coke Factory moment. So guess what? 2018 rolls around. I go to the James Beard Awards. I've been nominated. I see them three up on stage. The same three people who told me I couldn't be intersectional were an Egyptian woman who does not wear head covering hijab in America, married to a non-Muslim man, a secular Jewish woman from New York, and a Puerto Rican Jewish woman editor. I'm like, you're telling me I can't exist, but you, okay. So here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Especially now with the current circumstance. You know what his name, their name, what, yes, you know what that is. This appeal to nationalism and the bubble and the box for safety's sake makes nobody safe. This room is full of cousins. It's full of people who don't know they're actually related to each other. We talk about how we value family. And by the way, that does not mean people within your phenotype group. That means across the spectrum. Let's be clear about this. Let's be real. No, this isn't just you look like me, so therefore, Because I remember that day when, what's her name from Desperate Housewives, Eva Longoria, found out she was Yo-Yo Ma's cousin. I was like, how that happened? We don't know, but the TNA don't lie. We call Maury. She's like, damn. But beyond that, we share histories. We share a country. If you don't know how multicultural you are, you don't know how American you are. And if you're not intersectional and multicultural, you're not trying very hard to be an American. You are wasting your Americanness. You are wasting the opportunity. The globe has come to you, not you to the globe. You're wasting the opportunity that comes from when women are empowered to stand up for themselves and demand equal pay and demand that stupid men keep their hands off them, etc., etc. You are blessed to be in a place where, sorry my millennial gay children, I never dreamed I'd ever see marriage equality. But beyond that, I never dreamed I would see myself being married by a black lesbian veteran rabbi, who's also a vegan. I'm more like a vegan partner than the rest of you. You West Coast, y'all different. That's why I told you after being a northerner, because I was like, they want to add that in there. But I was like, what, So I get up there. No, I didn't get up there yet. I was nervous. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. And they said my category for writing. And they said me. And I sashayed up on that stage. Look, I was wearing dashiki, a full kente cloth, and all my rings from Africa and a kippah. I wasn't playing. Like you can literally hear Michael Jackson singing, Mama say, Mama Michael. And I said, I just knew I was going to lose because I was told I wasn't worth it. I still believe that lie, right up to the last second I got on stage. But you know what? I said that poem from Langston Hughes, I'm the darker brother, one day you let me sit at the table. That whole narrative of just like, and you'll be ashamed. And I called them out. I said, some of y'all had said that I was unmarketable, that I had nothing to say, that I was muddying the water, that it was too complicated. Well, how you like me now? And I'm not sitting here, I'm sitting with my ancestors. And then I said, you had Keanu, and I was like, oh, all the mishpach of the tribe were like, wait a minute. I said, y'all didn't notice that? And so that was cool. And then I grabbed a little table too, and they was doing this. So, Shame-faced. In the Torah, shamefacedness. Okay, cool, shut up. Dismiss. Love it. Then I sat down. Okay, I can drink now. I can eat this salmon now. I didn't even like salmon. I know, bad for Jew not like salmon. But, and they said, okay, time for book of the year. My friend Scott Barton got up with his dreadlocks and said, wait a minute, hold up. They got one brother on the board talking. What's going on? Then he said, I remember every single word, Michelle Obama said that she has lived in a house built by enslaved. I said, well, you talking about enslaved people? Sitting in my chair, rocking back, shuckling. And when he said, in his book, I said, no, y'all didn't. Fell out my chair. Cool. Okay, it's gonna say it. Look at Jane. First black author, history of James Beard. I couldn't go up there with my authenticity if I didn't tell you that the social justice angle of what I do comes deeply from Jewish tradition. I was unwilling to be a stereotype, and I was unwilling to give up notions of being Jewish because here you are teaching your kids that there were partisans and resistors and poets and Anne Franks who died making Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the divine name of Almighty God. And here you want me for the sake of a career, some money, which I got anyway, to go give up that part of me so that you can say, don't be afraid. He's not breaking your notions of what blackness means. Don't be afraid. Your notions of Jewishness as a bubble are intact. Don't be afraid. He won't stick his gay erotica in your face. Yeah. All the time, baby, 24/7. No, I'm gonna have to be all of that. I'm tired. I'm so exhausted with us being labels and boxes and jail and not being our full selves and teaching our young people that you have to hide something. You have to spend your life lying until you have a Dr. Sulu moment and wake up after Star Trek and say, here I am. No. Bring all that to the battle. Because it's part of the plan for you not to be your full self. It's part of the plan for you not to talk your whole truth. I don't care what you are. Your complex identity, and all of us have been complex since forever, but especially since 500 years ago. I use that, that whole Colombian, not even, we'll call it exchange, because that wasn't exchange, but anyway. but it was a collision of cultures and genes and people and war and violence and theologies and philosophies that made sure that everybody on this planet did not have the same life forever again. As a food person, I really know that. You know, one day somebody woke up in China and there was a sweet potato. And somebody woke up in Africa and there was corn. And somebody woke up in Mexico and there was wheat. But those things didn't travel by themselves. Those things traveled with people and dogmas and agendas that shape everything we live in now. That's why it's important to know our culinary history, know who we are in our families, but also to understand that we share this world and have been impacted by everybody else. We are happily impure. We're magisterially corrupted. And until we start celebrating that, understanding that's what this whole project of democracy means, we're doomed to repeat some things we don't want to repeat. Time for me to sit down with Ms. Mary.
Mr. Twitty. So we've had a nice time. I'm going to make sure that everyone in the room feels like they are a part of this conversation, but I will keep it intimate as well. You have said your mission is to document not just the history, but also the importance of African American food as it relates to the histories of Black people. Tell us a little bit more. Talk about food from that mission.
So it wasn't until I became really deep into Jewish studies, which I took class in American, and I became friends with Joe Nathan, who writes a lot of cookbooks about Jewish food. It's her main focus. And then other people. Marcy Cohen Ferris became a good friend of mine. Marcy Cohen Ferris wrote a book called Matzo Ball Gumbo after a recipe by someone I was privileged to meet in New Orleans, Mrs. Mildred Covert. And I'm going to answer that question and give you like a 2-for-1.
All right.
Because Mrs. Mildred Covert was hilarious. Unfortunately, she's not with us anymore, and neither is Miss Leah Chase, the mother of Creole food. I really wanted them to sit down together and have a meal with me. Be surrounded by all that wisdom, but it was not to be. Both about the same age, late 80s, early 90s, clear as bells. So Mrs. Mildred Covert, she wrote 3 cookbooks. One was called the Kosher Creole Cookbook, the Kosher Cajun Cookbook, and formerly the Kosher Confederate Cookbook, became the Kosher Southern Style Cookbook. So Mrs. Covert wrote me a letter through a student. She didn't do email. She's 89 at the time. She says, Mr. Twitty, I saw you in the pages of Southern Jewish Life magazine. I was their centerfold, y'all. And she says, I heard that you come to my city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And when you come here, you will be meeting with me. Signed, most especially, yours truly, absolutely, Mrs. Mildred Covert. I said, dang, okay. So you get to the hotel in the French Quarter, door flies open, and this little driving Miss Daisy lady, you're like in her white leopard print blouse, Prada shoes, and blood red vest. Says, get in. I said, all right. What I'm doing. Okay. So we went around the city of New Orleans and went to these old synagogues, some of which were operatives, some of which weren't. And we ended up at her grandson's restaurant in Metairie, Louisiana, called Kosher Cajun. And I must say that the Black folks in that kitchen kept it real, because a lot of kosher places would do other cuisines. But this was Louisiana, so they had to come correct. I actually had the matzo ball gumbo on point, and including the fake shrimp that were in it. It was delicious. But she sat at the table, she says, Mr. Twitty, I know what you're up to. I said, oh, hell, here it comes. She goes, you're going around the South trying to get a true history of the impact, she said this, of the African American. First of all, she said African American. It's cool. Because at this point, I was like numbly used to the phrase, my colored mammy. It's a deep South thing, a whole different world, y'all. And she says, I want you to know something. And she says, my mother learned to be an American because the African American ladies we grew up next to on Triad Street. I want you to think about this real quick. It took a Jewish lady from Louisiana to be the first white Southerner to tell me, I acknowledge and I understand that without you, there is no South and there is no America. And that the food is one of many points of light through which we understand ourselves to be an American, but I know where it came from, and so should you. She wanted to be on record to say this to me. It's in my book. There's this beautiful portrait on my website somewhere. But I guess that story is there to say that, you know, other places that I've been to, people just don't acknowledge that. It's the same people who, you know, have an audience of older white folks in Natchez, Mississippi, and nobody wants to say that. It's like verboten, and it's like, okay, it's, you know, why are y'all so mad? Why y'all big mad about this? What is the problem? And these same people come to me talking about their colored mammy, but I said to them, wait a minute, let me stop you in your tracks. Because you didn't know what I was talking about when I was up on the stage, when I said the African impact on your life and this globe. But wait a minute, that same colored mammy, wait a minute, did she take you to church and babysit you sometimes? She took her to her church, right? And you were the only white kid in the back row, right? Clapping along with everybody else, and your foot was tapping. And it was her brother that taught you how to play the guitar, right? And it was her kids who were your best friends growing up, right? And she put a little Pierce coin around your neck or a little John and Conquer root in your pocket. And she told you this for your protection, right? So you didn't realize that you were already indoctrinated into our music, our spirituality. And when you ate dinner, it was black-eyed peas and fried chicken and rice and gravy. And it was always hot sauce, right? How did you know? Because I've heard this damn story everywhere from southern and eastern Maryland to Texas to Missouri to Florida. And by the way, when I was in the synagogue in Savannah, everybody was testifying. They said to me, oh yeah, when we had Shabbos dinner, it was, so-and-so was like family to us. The phrase came up again. I don't know how family she really was. But here's the deal. They would say, oh yeah, we had okra soup, and we had Papa John, and we had matzo meal fried chicken, and we had kishka with black-eyed peas, and we had cornbread, and da-da-da-da-da. Did you hear anything about anybody's babka on that table? We had cool with peaches in it, and it was just like that. I heard, then I went to Maine, and I met a lady, Jewish lady from Savannah, and she said the same damn thing, the same menu for word for word. That's what I mean by documenting that impact. And what I do is I try to draw people back into the heritage. This Sunday I'm going to Senegal. I'm taking black chefs who've never been to Africa with me so that they know they have an ancient tradition. I want them to be grounded in that. I don't want anybody to ever feel who's black that they are unrooted. We are not orphans. We're not orphans of the West. We're not orphans of America. We're not orphans of Africa. We are our own sovereign people. Our own sovereign people. Because we didn't ask to be brought, and we didn't ask to be abused, but we have our own nationhood. That's the one word we came up with. It doesn't matter where the boat dropped you off, where it picked you up from. We said in Brazil, nación, nación. We said the same thing in Haiti. Same thing in English, nation. Because we understood ourselves to be a different people. And by the way, enslaved, everybody in this damn room were enslaved. I ain't got one bit of shame about being the strongest group of enslaved people that ever lived, because everybody else in history who was enslaved, they lost their culture, their identity. Except for two people, Jewish and African diaspora. No matter what was done to us, we did our thing so good that 3,500 years later, we're still talking about our really crappy dinner that we had.
That's pretty awesome. So we know that food is passed down, and it's not, food is is our culture, it's our spirit. And before we came in, Michael and I shared a little bit of connection that we have. I was raised by Southern parents. Both my parents are from rural Arkansas and Texarkana, exactly, and I've lost both of my parents. But I'm a Californian, and I'm part of that great migration. And my mother grew beautiful turnips in the backyard, and I'm just made me think about just the various pies and the peaches and the mulberries and just all those things, and the fresh fried chicken. When I say fresh fried chicken, because and you had to be the 7-year-old girl that stood on top of the steel thing. Well, my father was. This is in Northern California, just an hour and a half outside of the city. So, and then you would have the chicken that night. And I was always sitting at the table, always afraid that the muscle was still moving. But at any rate, how can we help young people, millennials, Generation Z, and the babies that are coming up right now in K-12 understand the import of who they are if they don't have enough of those experiences that you and I have had growing up?
I remember the last day I taught Hebrew school at Beth and Me, and I was meeting with somebody I really love and respect, Sharon Tash, who, should have been the director of the free movement in education. She was just brilliant. And she said something that was really profound. She says, they don't know what they're meeting the students. They don't know anybody who had the accent. They don't know anybody who got on the boat. Not to blame. They don't know anybody who had the accent from Europe, who got on the boat to go to Ellis Island, or Galveston, or Baltimore. They don't understand, they don't know. And because they don't have those experiences, they can't appreciate what that journey means in other people. This is just about us. It's about understanding what your neighbor went through. Like when my grandmother would say, you gotta walk in their shoes, what she meant. Because we had people in my community in DC suburbs, who were refugees from the wars of Central America. People who had come over in the Iranian Revolution, 1979. I remember that. One of my best friends to this day, Iran, two beautiful African-American Iranian daughters, yes. Just where her family came over. And she wasn't the only one. Almost our entire new Iranian community in DC was a product of the refugees from the revolution. Same thing with people who were coming from the Vietnam War, Vietnamese and Hmong and Cambodian immigrants. That's what I grew up with. And my grandmother basically made it part of me. She says, you gotta know what shoes they walk in. But that was her way of saying, we've suffered, they've suffered. And you really need to understand that whole process. You need to get empathetic, in other words. You need to get it. And I would get it because I would go over their houses and I'd eat, of course. You had to, in the community I lived in outside of DC, it was because of the military, because of the politics, because of the refugee culture, and it was because of the federal government that we weren't redlined out beyond each other. So we didn't grow up that way where you lived over there, you lived over here. Our block was 20 different nationalities. Our school had 50 flags, right? And I remember this, I know this is really tangential, but I remember there's this one boy I never could talk to because he was first name was Vietnamese, and his English was not very good. But his hair was like mine, he was brown. And I kind of knew, I asked my father was a Vietnam War veteran, and I said to him, Daddy, I said, there's this guy at school. He kind of broke it down to me why he looked that way. I said, how is he black, but also Vietnamese? He doesn't know how to talk to us, doesn't have any of our stuff. And he's obviously, he had, his wool was woolier than my wool, right? I had the Sicilian hair, he had the real deal. He could put a pick in it. But he didn't know what it meant to be black American, even though he obviously was half black American. That kind of stuff, right? That kind of, we didn't have a word yet to describe that. So when it comes to knowing who you are, your food, and where you're grounded. Black folks the same way. That great migration generation that saw the lynchings, you don't talk nonsense about black history and black culture. Like, these kids will kill me with that. I don't want to talk about no slavery. I don't want to know about no slaves. First of all, kids with a Z. Your ancestors were not slaves, they were enslaved. One is a condition and one is an identity. First, get that straight. Second of all, you showing your ass when you talk about how embarrassed you are. There's a phrase in the Caribbean that I love. The high the monkey climb, the more he exposed. So you be climbing up that tree, climbing towards equality and freedom, showing you're behind because you don't have respect for the ones who paid the debt before you. Your ancestors are moaning because you don't want to go to a plantation and keep the records straight. It's your job to go to those places, no matter how painful. You want to talk about painful? Think about the lives of the people who actually dealt with that. Like, they went through that shit to be here. You know, I've had two very profound moments that had to do with, you know, genocides of different types and being present, being alive. And one was at Yad Vashem in Israel. The other one was at Cape Coast Castle in Ghana. And when I was at Cape Coast, I realized something. I said, plantations one day, I mean, it's kind of hard. I mean, I cook on plantations. I do that because I want the predominantly white museum and interpretation business to understand that we will tell our own stories in our own terms. You will not usurp them, you will not lie, you will not make slavery into a fun game, a fun time. It was not. I'm going to tell the story the way it's supposed to be told. But you know how people made it off the plantation. Yeah. And you also understand, as I understand, the Great Migration tradition would have told you that some people never made it off for another 50 or 100 years.
Absolutely.
I mean, I never forget the moment where I was watching Eyes on the Prize, and Julian Bond narrating, great civil rights activist narrates and says that there were people when King marched from Selma to Montgomery who had never seen a dollar bill before, because they were still under that quasi-slavery of Jim Crow meets sharecropping tenant farming.
They were in the rural areas.
The rural areas, they were in debt, they were illiterate, and no one cared. You know, no one cared. That's what Bobby Kennedy was going to the South to see in the coal mines and those cotton plantations. So I go back to say, if you don't know that, but then you go to Cape Coast Castle in Ghana, right? So here you are, Jewish kid in America, who doesn't understand what it meant to get on that boat, never see your people again. No Facebook, no Twitter, no, just straight up. I'm getting in a boat, I'm leaving this community, I'm never gonna see my people ever again. I have to start a whole new life in America. To know what that's what page you could run around, planning your bar mitzvah thing. Get out of here. I'm old enough to remember y'all when In Sync was somebody's bat mitzvah entertainment at the biggest non-Orthodox show. And everybody was like, oh my God, did you get invited to the NC bat mitzvah? Like, really? What? Okay, y'all do that. Y'all do that. But on the other hand, it's like, when I was at Cape Coast, man, I realized something. I'm sitting where these ancestors sat, these men sat. I couldn't even go in the women's dungeon. I got so psychically freaked out. I couldn't walk in there. And I'll just say this. When I realized that those men and those women sat there in that filth for months, going crazy, not knowing they were being consumed and marketed. And then I realized something. I said, you know something? I just had this moment of this like flash, like it was a cathartic moment. And here I'm seeing them, I'm looking dead in the eyes, and I'm going, you had to sit there for months on end, not knowing what your fate was going to be, knowing you could die any minute, and you willed yourself into life. You took every single breath and did not take it for granted. And he looked me back in the eye and said, that's right. I'm sitting here in this heat with these lights, with these bugs, with these rats, people dying next to me, and I had to keep going so that you could come back here and pay homage to me and understand where you come from. That's right. That's right. Every single breath I took was so that you could be here. Then I realized there's a song in Israel lo ahabti. I haven't loved enough. And that's how I felt about the answer. I haven't loved you enough. I didn't understand that the ones on the plantation made it off, but they didn't even get there because you had to live through that middle passage. So that's what I tell you, students, my younger brothers and sisters, that's what you are. Your job is to replace me. Your job is not to, I'm not some person giving you advice. No platitudes, no cliches. It is your job to get those narratives in your family down before they are lost. I don't care where you're from, I don't care what you come from. It is your job to do that. We lose knowledge every 3 generations when our families start separating. See what I'm saying? So back in the old days, you had to go back 6, 8 generations in your family knowledge. So you knew all the families you were connected to. Now we get less time with that, so you have to do that work. If I may just do like 2 minutes on this food thing.
Go ahead.
Look, everybody has the same ethnic situation with their people and food. Our elders, and sometimes elders does not mean age. Let me get that right. Sometimes elders just means the state of mind, what they have to offer. First of all, everybody in this room is like, who has that family thing where they have a recipe and the recipes in the family goes, I can't get that recipe back. Or I wish I knew how someone made so-and-so. You know, I was in the kitchen during the holidays cooking with my cousin's ex-wife, Vietnamese American. We had a bomb time. We had a Puerto Rican, Vietnamese, black Hanukkah meets Christmas. Meets Kwanzaa. It was the best. We was all up in there. Everybody who ain't married and all our cousins and us talking about what it meant to grow up with our grandmother and us making like Duke Mom and like pho and like she's making the spring rolls and I'm making the fried chicken and we're just chowing down. Every bottle of hot sauce known to man. You know, it just I was so like honored because her husband comes over Italian and Native American, and I'm just like, wait a minute, this is what this is about. But you know what? Even more about it is the fact that Tom's daughter knew how to cook that food. And I have my little cousins in the kitchen. I said, y'all, this is your grandmother's recipe. You have to pay attention. How does our black phrase go? I'm only gonna show you this once. Which means you better learn. Doesn't matter where elders come from, the same base. When you go to learn a recipe, you gotta do it 4 times. The first time, you are the help. It's your job to do the dishes, take out the trash. You don't do that Generation X millennial thing. Tell me what you're doing. I'm videotaping you. Tell me, Yaya. Tell me, Bobby. Tell me, Papa. Tell me what the deal is. And of course, she looks at you like, get their damn. Come at it from a different angle. Let me help you. What do you do next? The steps. Next time, y'all go to the store together. You find out what brands of seasonings or what kind of vegetables, how they look for certain things in the meat or the rice or whatever you're doing. Every quality. What costs me, everything matters, right? And also what they tell the person helping them. You help them bring it in the house. You still got to do the dishes, still got to sweep the floor, still got to take out the trash. But this time, you go, let me hold for measurements. Y'all know, I don't care if you're Polynesian, I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're Polish. None of our people measure. There's no such thing. What have you ever seen? What have you ever seen? Them use some measuring spoons. You know how many times I tried to get Yvonne's mama to teach me how to make sabzi? And I'm wasting my time on how much you measure. It's like, no, that's not how this works. So I'm a little gay kid, right? I'm in the kitchen with everybody's grandma who didn't speak English. But they knew this black kid was fat and he could cook, so they're like, come here. Come on with me, baby. So I'm making this Cambodian food, I'm making this Turkish food, I'm making this Yiddish food, I'm in the kitchen, and we're just jamming. That's why I got passionate about food. But I also learned to shut up and pay attention. So the third time around, Here's what you do. You go, okay, so tell me more about who taught you this recipe. And then the person gets really wistful, really deep, and really will say, oh, well, you know, where do you get the oxtails from? Well, you know, we came from, what province your family from?
Mine?
Yeah.
Westmoreland.
There you go, Westmoreland. And, you know, and then, who was there? Who are our people? What stories do you know? And the person will just start emoting. And they'll start smiling and crying and laughing, because all of a sudden, the room is full of the people they've lost. And they're back home again with their people. And so are you. You are now surrounded by your ancestors, the community that you left behind. You're not alone. And that's the energy that's more important than the damn recipe. That's what you give your children. And by the way, those of us who are not children people, you give your nieces and nephews and people in your community who don't have nobody, who needs you to be another mama and daddy and friend. Because they need that culture too. I don't even care if they look like you. There's something very special about that moment when people who don't look like each other revere each other's culture and respect each other's histories and understand where you come from. And that fourth time you make the recipe. And then every single time you ask them, how does it taste? Well, it needs more, no. Well, okay, what about the color? What about the look of it? With texture, right? All that stuff counts. And here's the last part. Please don't feel hurt if you've already changed the recipe. Because guess what? In genes and genetics, you ain't a carbon copy of your people. You are a part of your people. You want a carbon copy, go get grafted somewhere else. In Star Trek later. But we're not. We're new people. And we have to be gentle to ourselves and respectful of the fact that we're going to make things a little different. But as long as the spirit is there. Like my grandmother's sweet potatoes were always just, wait a minute, sugar, white sugar, butter, and nutmeg and salt. That's it. My mother and I were just like, hold up, this nutmeg will be too strong. We cut back on the nutmeg, and then I stuck in some allspice, some of my Jamaican friends. And then I was like, the cinnamon's got to play a role, we got to do brown sugar. Mom was like, okay, cool. I only like the allspice so much, but it's okay, it's tone it down, we good. So already the recipe is the same, but it's changed.
Absolutely.
But it's still damn good. You know, I want to give you that little lesson because everybody can benefit from that.
It's beautiful.
The greatest honor I ever received was when I was doing the work for the cooking genie, and this young man, we weren't very far apart in age. He said to me, he must have been like 2 years, 3 years younger than me. He said, because of you, I'm going to Italy. And I said, okay. He says, I want to, just like you go to the South and Africa, know where you're from, I want to know what you from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I want to know where my Italian, Neapolitan, Sicilian grandparents lived and what they went through, and I want to know about this. So I asked him to pass on. I want to know who I am through them. And that was one of the greatest honors, because he didn't see it as, oh, that's the little black thing that you're doing on your little black side. Like most people treat our culture. No, it was, I see you as a fellow American, as a fellow human being. And that's really valuable, and I want that. That was the greatest honor I could have ever received. Other than my little 2 chains around my neck. But that was, to me, was like, he became instantly my brother. He was my brother. I said, look at this guy. I tell him, I said, you're my brother. My brother, how are you? Then when I found out I had like a little bit of Italian DNA, it was like, I knew you were my brother, my cousin. So it's good.
You have another Parmesan Italiano. Yes. All his grandparents are from Italy, my husband. I want to talk a little bit about the title, the folks that are here. When Aaron and his faculty put out the message that you're coming, we're all excited. On it was talking about imposter syndrome. So, I told you I have my own book coming out next month, and I devoted a whole chapter on imposter syndrome because I'm looking at the intersections between race and gender, particularly as an African American woman in my field. And there is something very real about even you as an award-winning, brilliant historian and scholar.
I forget Bear.
And and how, when I saw what you wanted to talk about, and I said, he knows he has some experiences, and you shared them, in your talk. But I can tell you right now, Michael, imposter syndrome, I'm older than you, I am, and we have the babies here, and I'm talking about babies, I'm talking about the students, that are experiencing the same degrees of imposter syndrome as they've entered the institution. Here I am, much further ahead, and here you are, and all these accolades in between. How might we show up and be able to talk about this thing of imposter syndrome and the way that it's at times crippling the potential, particularly of not only African American students, but people of color, our queer identified students,
Poor white kids.
poor white kids,
They still exist, y'all.
and all the ways in which race, class, gender excludes people and tries to put us in a box.
You don't think you have a story. They convince you that your story is not as important as theirs. They can be anybody. They change his faces real fast, though. Don't think I'm talking about the authority. The authority ain't only they. When you grow up black, told we don't tolerate that. We ain't gay. Black man can't be gay. Black woman who's lesbian turn her back on her people. Theys. Oh, girl children don't belong in school. I saw my mom swim upstream. It made me so angry. Then I learned that my grandfather, her father, was part of this nonsense. That she was not the only woman in my family told, no, you can't, because you're, excuse me? My mama was the smartest person I will ever know in this life. She was so smart. I mean, she could make an 8-braided hollow. She did it. She showed me. She's like, shut up, look at that bread. And then she would write fan fiction. She wrote fan fiction before I even knew there was fan fiction. Right? I have to this day. I have a script she wrote on envelopes. Because that generation. The back of used envelopes, she wrote Moonstruck 2. She loved the movie Moonstruck. She wrote the sequel, and by the way, she gave me the opera soundtrack. My mama had the soundtrack playing out. But she wasn't allowed to be her full self because, she was growing, she was maturing during the time of women's liberation. But she was also fighting a lot of people to be liberated, which really wasn't nothing but wanting to be equal. That's the thing. I want you to understand something. For a long time, people just constantly told me, it wasn't just those stupid people at the publishing company. I could survive them because I'd survived a lifetime. I don't often talk about personal stuff, but I'm going to say it anyway because I want you to know something. The minute we get personal with each other, that means we family. We mishpacha. So we don't tell no lies to each other. So one of my uncles on my mom's side said something damning one time. He said, "You're not going to make it." And I was like, you don't tell no black boy that. Because that's going to damn him to generational stuff that curses our family. Our sisters, half the time they'll just fight back. Half the time they'll fall for the curse too. You ain't going to make it, so okay, so therefore I give up. You got to be a special somebody to recover from that kind of verbal abuse. And then when I was in a certain relationship I had for a long time, I thought the verbal abuse and emotional abuse was normal. Because I had grown up with it. I had grown up with the idea of, oh, you're too chubby, you're too this, you're too that, so you don't deserve love in the same way I get to other people. Doesn't matter how smart you are, you still a nigger. You still a faggot, excuse my language. Doesn't matter. Those people don't deserve love. And then when I was in the Jewish community, first and foremost, albeit with lots of problems and moments of just like, oh my God, what's wrong with these people? I still have the occasion to be like, I'll never forget the feeling of like the moment that my uncle's statement, other people's statement, like died. It died because one time, typical me moment, I got a speck of dirt pie from a sweet potato. And my eye was red and swollen, and I went to eat this school. The principal was like, I gotta send you home. She's like, no, it's a speck of dirt. She's like, you know what? Okay, fine. One of my students' daddy was an ophthalmologist. He says, come to my office right to Hebrew school. So I'll take care of it. I said, how much? He says, it's nothing. Teach my child Torah. And I looked around and I said, man, why are you being so nice to me? I don't deserve people to be nice to me. Call me a name, treat me badly. That's what I'm used to. That's my lot in life as a big black gay guy. I'm garbage. I don't deserve it. When I went to the Torah for the first time for Yom Kippur, I remember my uncles ringing, you're not gonna make it. And other people too. My mom and daddy went through our own drama. I love my mother, to be honest. Well, anybody else heard? But my mother said some messed up stuff to me. And daddy too, and other people. It was only my sainted maternal grandmother who never said. She was like my angel face, my baby.
Yeah.
So I knew, whenever I have a challenge in life, she shows up in my dreams. The answers will show up, she's the first one. She's like, look, I didn't get you this far to leave you. And I never forget this because it was I remember the first time I was in Shul Yom Kippur. It was the first time that imposter syndrome kind of left me. Because I wasn't really Jewish, was I as Jewish as anybody else in the room. And my home synagogue, which is Sephardic, these beautiful teaks, the Torahs that are encased, they're not soft. Thank you so much, I need them. I'm going to need it a second. I remember that they're really heavy. They're not like the Ashkenazi Torahs that are in the soft cloth. And so in our ritual, those of you who don't know, may be familiar. In Jewish ritual, we make hakafot. We make a cycle around the synagogue with the Torah. Everybody kisses the Torah. And I remember I was in my sneakers and my little suit, and the man who had this really, it was silver. It was really heavy, silver casing. And he handed me the Torah. And at that moment, I had all this pain in my life, all this pain. And no one knew it but me. And so hold this immensely heavy Torah, it's almost killed me. Carrying that. And all I remember was, who am I to hold God's greatest gift to humanity? The Holy Torah. And I had it in my hands and I was crying. And I remember which the women's section, which our synagogue is not it's just a little thing, some small meeting. And all the women were just like praying over me. Like it was almost evangelical, right? But it was Jewish though. It was like, because in the Moroccan, North African culture, they're very similar elements. You go to the grave of the rabbis and you pray. You have these it is very mystical and very ecstatic. It's not ecstatic worship, but it is emotional worship. And they're all whispering these little prayers in Arabic and French and in Persian and Hebrew over me. And the little kids are not crying because I'm crying. And the old men stopped and he was trying to give me like a bracha, like the blessing that I father. My father and I didn't talk for 12 years. And they gave me the blessing that a father gives a son. And by the time I brought the Torah back to the ark, I could hardly walk. Talit was half off my back. I pulled my Talit up. And you know they say on Yom Kippur, I said the gates of heaven are open to all who come to pray. The whole universe can come pray on Yom Kippur, not just the Jews, every nation. And here I was, and I finally understood that the biggest imposter syndrome for me was not realizing I was a human being worthy of love, respect, and decency in my life. And that the fact that I was trusted on this holiest day of the year for us was something so sacred and so beautiful. Man, I was worthy of anything. But more importantly, it was now my job, my how-to give that same feeling to anybody who felt like they weren't worth it either. That's how you kill your imposter syndrome. You kill it through creating family. You kill it through waking up and knowing that you have to do this because somebody who looks just like you, who is struggling and suffering, needs you to be that role model. We need people to stand the hell up. And now this is the last thing. This is a beautiful picture that went around on Twitter or something. And it's of this Japanese, Indian, and I don't forget the last lady's ethnicity is. But it's like from 1880s, the 1890s, something crazy like that. And they were all doctors. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. You mean back in the day, these women had the courage to be doctors and not listen to anybody and they were doing their thing? And here we are still arguing about, no, these women knew what was up. Stand the hell up. If they could have done it, you can do it right now. I take my role models from everybody. I love trans people. I love women. I love everybody. People who look like the same experience as me because guess what? I'm learning from them how to be a better human being. That's what we need more of right now. I mean, that is the Torah in a nutshell. But it's also the moral suasion of black social justice. You know, I really believe that. I guess I'm grounded in who I am, my culture, my faith, and other aspects. But I'm also willing to say that I know I share this planet with everybody else. And I have to respect that at every second. I know that there are other truths in the world that I need to be privy to. I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I don't want to apologize for my emotions. I just want you to understand that for me to tell you this isn't revelatory, but you know, there's a saying in West Africa that goes, when you cry, it's the truth melting down your face. That's what that is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I turn this back over to Aaron, I just want to remind us of the things that Michael has taught us, that this is more than about food, that we are family, that food is just an opportunity and a pathway for us to be able to find ourselves. He said in The Cooking Gene, what this book has taught him through the process was how to love yourself as a descendant of Africans, and that we are essentially not only one African family, but we are one family, and that the Cooking Gene also helped you be extremely proud to be an African American. We want to thank you so much for bringing your whole self, the whole intersectional piece, Black, Jew, gay, baker, as well as historian and a bunch of other stuff. Thank you.
So we have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions. 2 things. One, I would suggest please don't make any speeches. That's not actually a suggestion. Two, if we could have focus on university students here tonight so that they would have an opportunity to ask some of those questions. So, interested parties, raise your hand.
Thank you for coming. So I saw your poster at the UC building, which is like right across the street. And the thing that struck me the most was when I saw that it talked about imposter syndrome. Because I feel like as a student, that's something that like I really struggled with. And I'm reading my origins, but I grew up in the States, and I remember at the age of 8 really feeling like I didn't belong. Because I didn't feel like I fit into like what a Black person was in America, but also just that upbringing, like in college and everything. So my question for you is, you speak in your book when you're thinking about like giving homage to the culture and sort of like how Black American culture, how American culture cannot be without Black Americans. I sort of just wanted to know what you think like the situation is being with Black Americans and Africans, because I feel like there's a lot of miscommunication going on.
Yes. It's part of the whole general plan. Before I went to West Africa, I got the whole gamut of just like, I'll never forget this argument I had one time with a student group from Alaska, big group. They come out to the East Coast to learn about, because they're in Alaska, they learn about all this East Coast history, but they're not on the East Coast. Trying to convince me, like almost like get into the light, go deep in the water, that I was not an African American, I was just an American. And I said, prove it. Show me that I'm the all-American anything. Excluding on the football field and on the front lines of the military and on tax day. Show me any other time that you really respect me as an American. I know I'm American because without me, you wouldn't be here. But that's not the point. And by the way, as far as me and the African folks concerned, stay out of this family business. You ain't got nothing to say. You don't get to tell me if I'm African American or not. I used to get so mad before I did my DNA, before I went to the continent. People telling me, oh, what part of Africa are your people from? You asked me this question, damn well knowing they got whipped and beat out of us. You just want to embarrass me and humiliate me because you think that's a cute thing to ask. But then you ain't got time when I want to break it down to you. See, first of all, my fifth grade grandfather told his children he was from the Gold Coast from Ghana. And then I got my DNA test done, and guess what? Not just me, but his direct male descendant. That wasn't a folk tale of the past. That was real. 100% match for the Ashanti of Ghana. You know how much nonsense that story had to go through to make it to the right ear, to get recorded, and then written down that somebody actually did a DNA test to prove that it was real? And even if I didn't have that, I would know from the other work that I've done, it's hard work, by the way, to get those connections made. When you go over there to West Africa as an African American, first thing you hear off we got the plane is welcome home. Welcome home. When I got the plane in Nigeria, it was hilarious. Because I didn't really get the welcome home. I got the welcome. I thought I had done something I didn't say thank you. Everybody was like, you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. And I thought, because I was walking down the aisle of the plane, that I wasn't supposed to say something, that maybe I did something wrong, I felt really embarrassed. Then I realized, no, they're telling you, welcome home. Welcome home, welcome back to Nigeria. And so I'm like, that's one level. The other level is when you go to like the cities, when you go to the villages, it's the most exhilarating thing ever. I mean, from the masqueraders that come out to greet you and entertain you, to the village elders, to like the way the older women like have to hug you and the way the women carry their babies. That to me was like the most like wonderful thing. I held everybody's baby in the village. I just long enough, 30 seconds, right? And it's like everybody passionate child, And then they give you your name, right? By the way, my name in Mandinka is Babi Fofana. And the chief explained to me that Fofana is Mandinka for Fofana, which means, you better say that again, preach on it. And I was like, dang, you gave me a good one, man. He says, then when I was talking, the chief stepped and says, aha, a Fofana. Say it again, preach on it. We have to understand that it does not matter where the boat dropped us off or where it picked us up from. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, Nelson Mandela, and many women and men who are here, who have gone on, want us to be a Pan-African people. And that means we have to support each other and understand each other. I understand that for a lot of continental Africans, slavery is a mystery. What happened to us after Africa is a mystery. And for a lot of African Americans, they don't understand what colonialism meant. Or what the Black Caribbean experience has been, only coming to America, but to England and France, and how people are treated. Right now, I'm glued to the conflicts that are going on in England, people being deported, who've been there for 2-3 generations. When Jamaicans and Barbadians and Bajans and Trinidadians fought for Britain and helped Britain win the war against the Nazis, and yet now they're being thrown back as part of some nationalist nonsense. People who've never seen an island in the West Indies. We have to work together. We have to learn about each other. And I think for us as African Americans, I think for us it's not an issue of appropriation of our anti-culture, it's a repatriation. And it's fortunate, because we come from all over the continent, our DNA, anytime I say you're not from one ethnic group, you're from many. You're blessed. Because now you can say, I'm part from Senegal, part from Angola, I may be part from Kenya or Madagascar or Ghana. The whole heritage is part of me. And now that means I have to be part of the future of Africa. So our chefs, when we go to Africa, go to Senegal and Gambia this Sunday, our chefs don't just learn the culture and take that and run. We invest in the continent. Number one, we put our money there. Number two, we come back there. Number three, we tell other people what it means to come over to America. You have to fight to get a visa as a Black person. How hard that is. So it was cool to bring us over without visas and chains by the millions. But it's not cool to let a kid who knows what to do, knows how to burn on math and technology, who you are afraid to be competition to you. That's what it's really about. Because you give us an inch and we'll take 10,000 miles. That's what we're talking about. I want us to learn from each other as cousins, as family. So that's why I think I just say to people, we have to travel to the continent. We have to get our brothers and sisters in the continent, the Caribbean, Brazil, and other places here. They can teach us. They can learn here and live here if they want to. We have to go to Brazil. We have to go to Suriname. We have to go to Haiti. We have to go to these places so that our dollars are there. Not that touristy nonsense dollars, but dollars that say, we want to know who we are, where we come from. And that it's not just the continent, it's everywhere else where the Black presence is felt. And let me say this really quickly. If I don't say it, you won't hear it. Jews in the audience, I want you to understand this. Whatever point of light Judaism comes from, the minute we come into that space with those stories, they become part of the Jewish community as well. It is not a one-way street. It's not our Black stuff. No, that is now all of our stuff. That's mishpacha business now. Just so you know, it's not just my shirt that's Black and Jewish. It's the whole shebang. Thank you for that. But that's why we do this. It's our third trip. It's my eighth trip to Africa. Because I'm on fire about this. I'm fire about building schools, about building community, about us learning about sustainable living in African communities, and also bring what we know, teaching people about our experience in the Americas. It's our family reunion. Yes.
All right, well, we try to end on time, so if other students or anyone else has questions, we'll ask Michael Twitty to stay after, but if everyone could join me in thanking our guest and thanking Dr. Mary Wardell for our groups.